guys, welcome back. This is Good Vibes and Bad Decisions. This is a true crime podcast, and we are joined today by our gorgeous and beautiful researcher, Amy Lou. Say hello.
Hi, everybody.
And you already know Gypsy.
Hi.
She kind of lives here at this point now. You know what
Yeah,
I
I do.
mean? She's
I do.
always here. But why don't you tell everybody what we've got today? Our beautiful Amy got us all the information that we needed and helped put it together. She's wonderful.
So today we have a episode called Nightmare Healthcare, and we decided to put a few of the well-known cases of serial killers who worked in healthcare together into one episode. And it's going to be a long one, so strap in and make sure you've got your snacks.
And if you've not put the kettle on now, then you're far too late, so you just have to wait now. Right, so sit down
Yeah.
and stop it. Right, we didn't do the pause button here. That's just for, that's for the week, right? So stop it, sit down and listen. Right, let's go. Take it away, gorgeous chops.
So this is entitled Nightmare Healthcare: When Caregivers Became Murderers. Hospitals are strange places after dark. Long after visiting hours have ended and the city outside has fallen asleep, the wards remain awake. Monitors pulse with green lines in dimly lit rooms. Nurses move quietly between bedsides. Somewhere, a patient takes their first breath after surgery. Somewhere else, a family waits anxiously for news that could change their lives forever. In these corridors, healthcare professionals witness moments few other people ever see. They are there when frightened patients receive devastating diagnoses. They are there when pain finally eases. They hold hands through fear, confusion, and grief. They hear confessions, secrets, regrets, and final wishes. They are invited into some of the most intimate moments of human existence, not because they are family, but because they are trusted. A nurse might sit behind. Put, put, I'll start that bit again. A nurse may sit beside an elderly patient at 3 o'clock in the morning when no one else is there. A doctor may be the last person a dying patient speaks to. A caregiver may know a person's fears, vulnerabilities, and private struggles in ways even close friends never will. That trust is sacred. It forms the foundation of healthcare itself. Every day, millions of patients place their lives, their well-being, and sometimes their survival into the hands of complete strangers, believing those strangers will do anything possible to help them. And almost always, that trust is repaid with compassion. But what happens when it isn't? What happens when the person standing beside the hospital bed, the person everyone trusts, the person trained to heal, has darker intentions? Today, we're exploring some of the most chilling cases in criminal history. Cases involving doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers who crossed an unimaginable line.
They're disturbing because they happened in places meant to be safe. Places filled with healing. Places where the sick sought comfort. And places where nobody imagined they would need protection from the very people caring for them. So dim the lights, settle in, and join us as we step into the quiet corridors of hospitals past, where behind the reassuring smiles, clipped name badges, and professional uniforms, some of history's most unsettling crimes remained hidden in plain sight. Healthcare professionals are among the most trusted members of society. Doctors, nurses, and other medical staff are expected to heal, comfort, and protect vulnerable patients. Yet history contains a handful of shocking cases where trusted caregivers use their positions to harm or even kill those in their care. These crimes caused public outrage not only because the deaths involved, but because they represented a profound betrayal of trust.
Dr. Harold Shipman, the doctor who betrayed trust. There are few crimes more disturbing than those committed by someone entrusted to save lives. Doctors occupy a unique place in society. We invite them into our homes, trust their judgment, and rely on them during our most vulnerable moments. For decades, patients in the town of Hyde, Greater Manchester, placed exactly that trust in a local family doctor named Harold Shipman. To many, he appeared to be the perfect general practitioner, dedicated, professional, and deeply respected within his community. But behind that carefully maintained image was a man responsible for one of the most shocking series of murders in British history. This is the story of Dr. Harold Shipman, sometimes called Dr. Death, a physician whose crimes fundamentally changed the way deaths are investigated and doctors are monitored in the United Kingdom. Shipman was convicted of murdering 15 patients in the year 2000, but later inquiries concluded that the number of victims was far higher, with estimates reaching at least 215 and possibly more than 250. Harold Frederick Shipman was born in Nottingham, England in 1946. He studied medicine at the University of Leeds and qualified as a doctor in 1970. Eventually, he established himself as a general practitioner, building a reputation as a hardworking and caring family doctor. His patients trusted him completely. Many of those patients were elderly people living alone. They viewed Shipman as a dependable community figure, someone who made house calls, spent time with patients, and seemed deeply committed to their well-being. What nobody realized was that many of these encounters would end in death. According to findings later uncovered by investigators, Shipman's preferred method of murder was remarkably simple and horrifyingly effective. He administered fatal doses of diamorphine, a medical form of heroin commonly used for severe pain relief. Victims would often die shortly after Shipman visited them. Because he was their doctor, his explanations regarding the cause of death were rarely questioned. Many deaths seemed natural. Most victims were elderly, making sudden deaths appear unsurprising. Shipman would frequently sign death certificates himself, recording deaths as resulting from old age or natural causes. This authority allowed him to conceal his crimes for years. Investigators later identified a pattern stretching over decades, beginning in the 1970s and continuing into the late 1990s. Like many serial offenders, Shipman was nearly caught before his eventual arrest. In 1998, local undertakers and medical professionals began noticing an unusual number of deaths among Shipman's patients. The concerns were serious enough to trigger a police investigation. However, the initial inquiry failed to uncover sufficient evidence, and Shipman continued to practice medicine. This missed opportunity would later become a major subject of the Shipman inquiry, which examined why warning signs had not led to earlier intervention. Had the concerns been pursued more aggressively, numerous lives might have been saved. The case that finally exposed Shipman revolved around one of his victims, an 81-year-old woman named Kathleen Grundy. Grundy was a popular former mayor and widely respected within her community. After her death in 1998, her family was stunned to discover a will that supposedly left a substantial portion of her estate to Dr. Shipman. Her daughter, a solicitor, immediately suspected something was wrong. The document appeared suspicious, an investigation followed, and Grundy's body was exhumed. Forensic tests revealed evidence consistent with a fatal diamorphine overdose. Investigators soon concluded that Shipman had not only murdered Grundy, but had also forged her will in an attempt to profit from her death. The carefully constructed facade was beginning to collapse. Police arrested Harold Shipman in September 1998. As investigators reviewed medical records and death certificates, a disturbing picture emerged. Prosecutors eventually charged Shipman with the murders of 15 women and with forging Kathleen Grundy's will. The trial concluded in January 2000. The jury found Shipman guilty on all counts. He was convicted of 15 murders and 1 count of forgery. The judge imposed a life sentence and stated that Shipman should never be released from prison. Even at that stage, many suspected the true scale of his crime had not yet been uncovered. They were right. Following his conviction, the British government established the Shipman Inquiry, chaired by Dame Janet Smith. The investigation was vast. It examined hundreds of deaths, reviewed enormous quantities of evidence, and sought to determine how many people Shipman had actually killed. Its conclusions were staggering. The inquiry determined that Shipman had killed at least 215 patients and indicated that the true number may have been significantly higher. Some estimates placed the total closer to 250 or even beyond. Most victims were elderly women, though not exclusively. The murders spanned more than 2 decades. Investigators concluded that Shipman routinely exploited the trust placed in him by vulnerable patients. Shipman's case highlighted several weaknesses in the healthcare and death certification systems. As a doctor, he had access to controlled drugs. He could certify deaths. He often treated his patients alone without witnesses. Because many victims were elderly, their deaths did not initially appear unusual. An inquiry later examined failures involving police investigations, death certification procedures, and the oversight of medical professionals. It ultimately led to major reforms aimed at improving patient safety and preventing similar crimes in the future. On January the 13th, 2004, one day before his 58th birthday, Harold Shipman was found dead in his cell at Wakefield Prison. He had died by suicide. He never confessed to the murders. He never provided an explanation for his actions, and he never offered the families the answers that they desperately wanted. The story of Harold Shipman remains one of the darkest chapters in British criminal history. His crimes were not only acts of murder, but acts of betrayal. Every victim trusted him. Families welcomed him into their homes. Communities respected him. His position as a doctor gave him access, authority, and credibility, and he used all three to conceal decades of killing. Today, Shipman's name is remembered not for medicine, but for the catastrophic abuse of trust. His case serves as a reminder that even the most respected institutions and professionals require oversight, accountability, and scrutiny. Because sometimes the person people trust the most can become the person they fear the least. And that can be the most dangerous disguise of all. The case led to major changes in how deaths are certified and how doctors are monitored in the UK. Shipman's crimes deeply damaged public confidence in medical institutions.
Right, we ready?
Yep.
Yep.
Right, 3, 2, 1, go. So, what do you ladies make about this case then?
I think hearing about it, where he was from as well, and I was born around the area, and I have a lot of family living around that area. And to
Mhm.
think if he was never got caught, it sort of brings it close to home. Like, could my family members have been affected by this guy if he was
Exactly.
never caught?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Definitely. I think the way he died was a cop out, though. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh,
I'm really.
absolutely.
oh, 100%.
It's so
Coward's way out.
frustrating. Yeah, it really. With that, it really is because I just think this is so frustrating. So many people are sat there. So many family members. So many, and you know what? For a GP, to breach trust like that is
Mhm.
like nothing you would ever. That's worse than it's a violation, right, of everything, and it
Yeah.
doesn't just affect you, it affects everybody around you. Imagine the trauma the families have about getting in a jag or having a
Mm-hmm.
doctor visit at the house, and like these things never go away. And Kathleen Grundy's family, you know, her daughter, I just felt for her.
After reading the will that he forged as well, the fact of how easily he did that,
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
um, and as you say, it's the long-lasting effects. I think even not just the families, but anyone who hears the stories, like it can traumatize a lot of people
It
to
leaves
not,
shockwaves.
yeah,
I
and
think
the,
from a psychological point of view, I feel like he had almost a god complex, and
Yeah, definitely.
it was a very narcissistic view he had of himself. You know,
it's
he
like a
could get, he
delusion
could
position
give
of
life,
power.
he could take life away.
Hmm.
It was ultimate power for him,
Yeah.
and he could usher people in, because I have no doubt that he supervised births at points,
Hmm.
and he could usher people out. And the
Mhm.
fact that he took his own life without giving the families the answers that they deserved, he
Yeah,
didn't
that's
Yeah.
feel. It gives the impression to me that he didn't feel he had to answer for his motives. He
it's
didn't have
almost
to.
selfish.
Yeah, it's
It's very
incredibly selfish.
self-centered.
Like, I
Yeah,
just think that there could have been 100 people in the room when these people died, and he still would have been the last person that anybody suspected.
yeah,
Yeah, like I think that's the thing I've noticed in a lot of these type of cases is that it's done even in front of friends and family, and they
Hmm.
have
yeah.
no suspicion because of how they do it.
Still hidden in
Um,
plain sight.
Hmm.
yeah, but it's 100% abuse of power
Hmm.
what he did,
How
and
did you
doctors
feel
do have a.
researching these cases, Amy? Like, were you frustrated when you were researching them? Like,
I mean, some of them I already sort of knew because some of them are quite recent, which we will get into. But
hmm
it infuriates me because my mum works in the NHS, and it just annoys me that they could just freely do it, and you're supposed
hmm
to
Yeah.
trust these people, and
I think
you have
I
no
think
idea like what they're doing.
it takes away from how hard people who work in healthcare actually work.
Mhm.
Yeah, people who are doing
Exactly.
it for
Yeah.
the right reasons and people who are
Yeah.
actually doing their job. And it literally puts that dark cloud of suspicion above every single person that comes in.
It,
It
it
lingers, and
really
whatever GP practice he worked in or whatever hospital they worked in, that they have to carry the dark cloud and they have to fix the
Mhm.
reputation, even though they never broke anything.
Yeah,
Well, it's like if you must think as well the amount of. I mean, did he work in a surgery or was it a hospital he worked?
it was
It
a
was a GP
surgery.
surgery, so he did home visits, and when he killed all of these people, he did it at a home visit where they were all elderly patients, and he did all of it at home.
So it makes you think as well how many as well from the actual surgery itself. How many patients stopped going to that surgery because of what that one man did, and how many
And it's
Yeah,
not
people
that
might
as
have.
well. So you're on the ball because there was actually suspicion before he was arrested. There was a little bit of a cloud above him before
hmm
he was arrested because he produced more death certificates than any other GP that was there.
and I get what Amy's saying, because after his arrest, people would have
Mhm.
stopped. People in that area
Yeah,
would have been fearful of going to the GP surgeries,
Yeah,
yeah,
not just
100%.
his, but also others, because they would have been like, well, how do we trust these people?
yeah.
And how
Yeah,
many people's illnesses and ailments
Mhm.
went undetected because of fear of doctors?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, how many have
exactly.
gone untreated because they wanted to go there? And then on the opposite side, how many other doctors or nurses might have become out of work because nobody was going to see them when they worked in that
Hmm.
place? Like you say, it's a
And
ricocheted
then
effect.
you can switch it around as well because how many patients was he seeing that he was not diagnosing with issues that he was not
Mhm.
interested in because they were too young, that he never picked up
Yeah,
anything that he would have, clearly he showed an overly keen interest in elderly ill patients.
yeah,
So he liked doing the home visits. He preferred the home visits. He was very much a community doctor. How
Mhm.
many people did he deny appointments to, or did he just mistreat and send away with paracetamol? When, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, he
yeah,
obviously
Yeah.
had a focus and he obviously had a sort of a victim MO, if you like. So anybody else
Mhm.
outside that would not have fitted the God complex that he had. So, how
Yeah.
did he treat those patients? So it goes on and on. And the health service that he worked for, I mean, it's incomprehensible what they suffered.
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, there is a clear victimology here. Like,
Hmm.
as with most serial killers, we have just done a video on one that was a complete, like, random
A
chaos killer.
chaos killer, yeah, he totally
Yeah.
was a chaos killer, right?
But generally, serial killers are meticulous. They have a clear victimology. They have a clear MO.
Yeah.
And he's a good example of a clear victimology, a clear modus operandi. He had a way of doing it. He knew exactly who he was targeting. They were vulnerable because they were alone in their homes and they were poorly, or elderly or
Mhm.
frail. And listen, that I've worked with the elderly before, and I've seen two grannies have a punch up. over
Mhm.
a place in the queue at the canteen. Let me tell you.
Yeah, 100%. Completely agree. My
It's
thing
not
is
just,
also, right, so I think also as well, you have to think, right, he was exposed through other doctors, his own colleagues, right? They were looking
Hmm.
at the amount of death certificates that he was signing and the amount of things that was being left. The lawyers were, and the families were like, why would my mother leave everything to the doctor and not, us?
yeah,
Yeah.
But how hard is it, right? You have to think, and you guys work, you have worked
yeah,
before, had jobs. Oh, how hard is it to stand up against a colleague, especially in the health service? How hard is it because if you're wrong, you sacrifice your integrity and your whole career. So you better be sure. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? If you're stepping
Yeah.
up and accusing
It
another
is.
doctor,
It is incredibly hard, but I will say it is encouraged if you see something, say
yeah.
something.
yeah, but how many
Now,
people
but
were like,
then it very much was the doctors are the gods, and
Yeah.
we
yeah,
only do what the doctors say.
It's still very similar to that now. I think doctors and
Yeah,
surgeons are very up there, and you have to have some goddamn good evidence to
yeah.
even question. Um, but like you say, it's one thing to don't be afraid to speak up, because the way I see it, even if you don't have, let's say, the damning evidence, the more voices that speak, the more it will
hmm
get
Yeah.
heard.
And I just think I would rather deliver a sincere apology if I'm wrong
Hmm.
than sit there
Oh,
if I'm right
absolutely.
and see a more catastrophe, more bodies building up, more all of
Hmm.
these things. For me, cases like this are so frustrating because, especially during COVID and things like that, we have seen what happened to our health
Yeah.
service. We've
Yeah.
seen what our doctors and nurses and everybody that works in any clinical setting had to go through. And I'm
Mm.
talking doctors, dentists, cleaners, everything. I've seen what
Mhm.
they've
It was hard. It was
auxiliaries.
really
Yeah,
hard.
it was,
I mean,
and do you know,
I physically saw it because I say my mum works in the
right?
hospital, and she honestly, hats off to her during COVID.
And these people are the ones that are struggling to regain a reputation that was tarnished by someone they probably didn't even meet, never
Hmm.
knew, didn't work with. These things, once it hits the news, it's global. There's nothing you can do. The minute it's printed in a newspaper or it hits a TV station, you're out. There's nothing you can do to save it.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter how good a doctor you are, how good a nurse you are, what hospital you work in. The minute one person ruins it for everyone, trying to bring that back is horrific, it's horrendous, and almost sometimes it's undoable.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But let's move on. Let's go to our next nightmare health worker and let's pop on to our next story and we'll see what you guys make of this. I'm going to go into this one and I'm going to talk to you guys, and not everyone would have heard of this, but a few of you will, and you'll be expecting it. I'm going to talk about Beverly Allett. Now, she is otherwise known as the Angel of Death, right? In 1991, a series of mysterious medical emergencies occurred on a children's ward. Infants and young children who had entered the hospitals with relatively minor injuries and illnesses, they suddenly suffered cardiac arrests and unexplained collapses. Now, hospitals are places people associate with hope. Parents bring their sick children there believing that doctors and nurses will do everything possible to help them recover. For many families, placing a child in a hospital bed is an act of trust. In 1991, families at Grantham and Kesteven Hospital in Lincolnshire believed their children were in safe hands, and they were wrong. Over a period of just 59 days, a young nurse named Beverly Allett carried out a series of attacks on children under her care. By the time she was caught, 4 children were dead. Others had suffered life-changing injuries, and a small hospital ward had become the centre of one of Britain's most disturbing criminal investigations. This is the story of Beverly Allett, the nurse who became known as the Angel of Death. Beverly Gale Allett was born in 1968 and grew up near Grantham in Lincolnshire. After leaving school, she pursued a career in nursing and eventually became a state-enrolled nurse. By 1991, she was working on the children's ward at Grantham and Kesteven Hospital. To colleagues and patients, she appeared to be an ordinary nurse caring for sick children. Yet investigators would later discover that some of the most serious medical emergencies occurring on that ward seemed to happen when Alec was present. At first, nobody suspected a nurse. I mean, after all, who would? A ward filled with emergencies. The events unfolded between February and April 1991. Children who appeared stable suddenly suffered unexplained collapses. Some experienced cardiac arrests. Others developed alarming symptoms that doctors struggled to explain. Several recovered after emergency treatment, only to deteriorate again. What made the situation so unusual was the number of incidents occurring within a relatively short period. Medical staff initially searched for clinical explanations. Was there an infection spreading through the ward? Was there an undiagnosed medical problem affecting multiple patients? The possibility that someone would be deliberately harming children seemed almost unimaginable. Investigators eventually concluded that Alec attacked 13 children during the 59-day period. 4 of those children died. Amongst the victims were Liam Taylor, who was 7 months old, Timothy Hardwick, he was 11, Becky Phillips, aged just 2 months, and Claire Peck, who was 15 months old. Other children survived but suffered serious injuries. Some were left with long-term health consequences. One survivor, Kaylee Asher, was left with permanent brain injuries after being attacked as a baby. Investigators determined that Alec used a variety of methods. Evidence presented during the investigation showed that at least some victims were given large doses of insulin. In another case, a large air bubble was discovered in a victim's body. Authorities were never able to determine exactly how every attack was carried out. The methods varied, but the result was always the same. Children who should have been recovering suddenly found themselves fighting for their lives. Many were far too young to understand what was happening. As more incidents occurred, medical staff became increasingly concerned. According to later accounts, it was after the death of Becky Phillips that the hospital staff began seriously questioning the number of unexplained collapses and deaths taking place on the ward. The police were eventually called in to help investigate. Investigators began reviewing shift patterns, medical records, and witness statements, and a troubling pattern soon emerged. Alec appeared to be present during every single incident. She also had access to the medications and the equipment associated with all the attacks. What initially looked like a series of tragic medical emergencies was beginning to look like something far more sinister. The investigation became one of the most complex medical murder inquiries that Britain had ever seen. Detectives worked alongside medical experts to reconstruct events from the hospital records and all the clinical evidence. They examined unexplained collapses, medication histories, and the timing of all of these incidents. And the deeper investigators looked, the clearer the pattern became. The evidence pointed repeatedly towards one person, Beverly Allitt. Allitt was charged with multiple offences relating to the attacks on children in her care. She did plead not guilty. In May 1993, a jury found her guilty of murdering 4 children, attempting to murder several others, and causing grievous bodily harm to additional victims. She received 13 life sentences. The trial judge described her as a serious danger to others and indicated that she was unlikely ever to be considered for safe release. The verdict shocked Britain, not only because of the victims' ages, but because the crimes had been committed by someone entrusted with their care. Following the convictions, a public inquiry known as the Clothier Inquiry was established to examine how the attacks had gone undetected. The inquiry found shortcomings in hospital systems and communication. It produced recommendations aimed at improving patient safety, strengthening recruitment and monitoring procedures, and helping hospitals identify warning signs more effectively in the future. The case became an important catalyst for changes within the National Health Service, yet no recommendation could undo the damage that had already been done. Rather than being sent to conventional prison, Alec was detained in Rampton Secure Hospital, a high-security psychiatric facility. Decades after her conviction, the impact of her crimes continues to be felt by survivors and families. Some victims suffered permanent disabilities. Parents who brought children to hospital expecting care instead endured devastating loss. Survivors have spoken publicly about the lasting trauma caused by the events of 1991. The story of Beverly Allen is one of the most disturbing cases in British criminal history. Unlike many serial offenders, her victims were among society's most vulnerable, sick children whose families believed they were being protected. She worked in a place dedicated to healing, surrounded by people whose sole purpose was to save lives. Yet over the course of just a few weeks, she transformed a children's ward into a crime scene. More than 3 decades later, the case remains a chilling reminder that trust, especially in hospitals, is one of society's most precious assets. And then when that trust is abused, the consequences can echo for generations. What do we think, ladies? How do we feel about that?
I'm just the fact that she did it. Would you say over a 56-day span?
59-day span, yeah.
Yeah,
59-day span
59 days, yeah.
is
59.
is horrific. It was like she was getting a massive thrill from doing it that she just couldn't stop.
For me, it was what started it. You know, why then and why? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like I mean that question goes anybody who does anything like that. What makes you even want to comprehend something so vicious like that, and especially towards children? I mean, what the youngest was 2 months old.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's
I think
I've
the
got no words really for it. I mean, I've got children myself, and yeah, I've got no words.
I think the fact that it's a woman
Mm,
doing these things to children when
mhm.
women are purported to be society's caregivers, right?
Yep,
We're
the
the ones,
maternal thing.
the maternal, the nurturers, and
Hmm.
the fact that it's a woman who's in a care profession doing it is what
Yeah,
makes it so disturbing.
It
it
actually
kind of makes
defies
me think.
belief in some way.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking, was it like a jealousy thing that these
I
other people could
think
have children? Is that why she took it away?
I
Because
think she got a buzz from doing it, and I think that she got a buzz from having that access to the children and from getting away with it for those 59 days, because she did for a period of time get away with
Yeah.
it.
yeah,
And you know what it reminds me of? It's the. Have you ever heard the saying, tell your mum I saved your life, but don't tell her I pushed you?
Hmm.
yeah,
She very much was taking the lives of these
It's almost
children,
like a
but
hero complex.
yeah, and but
mhm,
she was then to be seen trying to save their lives, knowing it was impossible. So she was
Hmm.
informing the families of their death, whilst the families were watching her do things like CPR, give
Yep.
medication. It was almost like, and forgive me for the phrase, but for want of a better sentence, it was like flogging a dead horse. She knew there was
yeah,
no comeback from her actions, but she wanted to be seen as trying to save their life, and she got all the thanks and she got all the gratification of looking like a hero without, and it's a god complex, and it's really difficult to see a female with that. Don't you think, Jips?
Yeah, I'm just looking it up. There is a name for this complex.
It kind of, whilst you're
Mm.
looking it up, it kind of makes me feel like, let's say, look at it on a different angle.
Hmm.
Let's say the 4 deaths were, even though they weren't, but they were accidental. Maybe it was just as along the lines of what you were saying, Beth, was maybe she was bringing them to the brink of almost death, bringing them
To
back
try
she
and
could,
bring them
yeah, so
back.
she could get
Yeah.
the praise. And
But
maybe
4
that's why
times it
only
never
4.
worked.
That's what I mean. That's why maybe only 4 didn't work, and maybe that's why it happened so often in a short span, because she was
I
trying
can
to
totally
protect
get on
Liz.
board with that. Yeah, I can absolutely. I see where you're going. I totally agree. I think that is a really good theory. I think that's, to be seen as the hero, to be seen as, because
Mhm.
there's 13 cases, right? And not all of them died. So it doesn't look like she's actually trying to kill them. It looks like she was trying to put them on the brink to bring them back to be the hero, which
Yeah.
is worse. I'm sorry, but it's worse
Well,
because
which is one side of the coin, and which is the hero complex. And I did look it up, and it is actually called the hero complex, where
it's a,
someone secretly causes harm or injury just to step in and play the hero.
this is
But
wild. I
it's
totally agree.
also it can be put historically, it can be tied to Munchausen's by proxy too.
See, this I'm very close on, because Gypsy, as you know, I'm a survivor of
Yeah,
Munchausen's by proxy, and I was hurt twice by the person who was meant to care for me. I was overdosed twice, once when I was 18 months and
yeah,
once when I was 3 years old. And my dad watches this. Hi, Dad, I love you. He helps me get through this. He often encourages me. Talking about it makes it makes it real, and it makes it a problem that I am dealing with in my life. And there is a video on the page in the shorts about it, but this is not
yeah.
about me. But what I am saying is the victims of Munchausen's by proxy, or survivors of it, right, are often put in a small category. And again, it's the attention of making sure that you can make someone ill only to get the attention of keeping them alive. The intention of someone with Munchausen's by proxy is never to kill the patient. It's to get the
Well, no,
attention
because
of the patient being ill.
if they kill the patient, they don't get the attention. So let me just
That's
define
it.
between the two.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
hero complex is someone who is not in a caregiving relationship, so a parent or a carer. So
Yep.
hero complex is someone who is outside of that intimate relationship,
Mhm.
and they will cause harm or injury just to step in and play the hero, and then
Yeah.
gain praise, the attention, the sense of power, and that is known as hero syndrome.
Can you
And
define,
Munchausen,
yeah, I was just going to
yeah,
ask if you can define that for the audience as well, please.
Munchausen's by proxy. There is Munchausen syndrome, which is when you make yourself sick in order to get attention, also known as hypochondria. But
Mhm.
Munchausen's by proxy is which is the condition that directly relates to hero complex,
Yep.
but it's different because of the standing of the person that's doing the harm, right?
Mhm.
So Munchausen's by proxy is when a parent or a caregiver, or a guardian makes a child sick in order to receive praise and act as the devoted savior um, from the people around them and from doctors and nurses and everything. So in Beverly Alex's case, she would come under the hero complex, because I
Yeah, I
think this is
agree.
very much the case with her, is she was bringing them to the brink of death to bring them
To
back and
bring
get
them
the
back.
praise, right?
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. I think that is absolutely what she was doing. I was made ill twice and put on a ventilator. I was on life support twice. And obviously, this is documented in my medical records. And when
Hmm.
I found this out, I took a step back to social media, to focus on my own health, to focus on actually being able to process the fact that this happened to me,
Yeah,
being able to process that I am living with illnesses now that I only got because what my guardian did to me. So I can tell you, I completely agree with you, from somebody who has personal experience of having a guardian with Munchausen's by proxy, that I completely agree with you, Amy, and you, Gypsy, your analysis on the hero complex. I think that she wanted to, because let's be honest, right, and let's be really serious here, because we don't sugarcoat anything here on this channel.
no,
If she wanted to kill all 13 of those children, they'd be dead.
they'd be there.
They
Yes,
should
they
have
would,
done. Yeah.
100%.
right? So clearly she did not. She had all the means, all the access, and everything to make sure those babies died. And I know that this sounds very cold-hearted, and that's not how I mean to come across. I'm trying to be factual. And if we're being honest, if she did want all 13 of those children to die, they would not be alive. And my thing is that 13 is the number, the unlucky number that she was charged with. But I'm telling you now, and you know as well, Gypsy, with the amount of cases we investigate, 13 is not
Yep.
the overall number of babies she
No,
had.
it's not. It's far
No.
from it.
That's not, and in that hospital setting, that's not the first time she ever did anything like that was outside of the box, right? As a
Mhm.
human standard, she grew up doing things like that. She grew up attention seeking. She grew up, and all of the signs were there. People just see them, think they're red flags, and just ignore them, or you distance yourself from people like that. But not everybody does, and not everybody gets the chance to actually do that. And you know, if we appeal to all our audience that watches as well, and if you are in a situation and you feel like somebody is you are in an unsafe environment and you feel like you may be able to relate to any of the cases we've discussed and the three that still have to come, there is resources and there is help there for you. And even though, you know, we don't agree that any of these people we've discussed so far have got Munchausen's by proxy, we
No.
will put some links in the description to anybody who wants to learn about it, to anybody who wants to further their education and knowledge on the subject,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
everybody needs to be aware. Okay, you sometimes you don't even know you're a victim until you know it's all over. Something
You might watch
happens.
something like this and
Yeah,
sit back and go, wow, that actually happened to me and I didn't realize it was a crime.
you know, when I was told what happened to me, I was told about 8 months ago, wasn't I?
Yeah.
What had happened to me, and being able to deal with, now this is written on medical records, you know, it's all sealed, it's all written in black and white there, and that was difficult for me to process, and Gypsy got me through so much of everything when I found out what had happened to me. So if you are in doubt, please go and get some research, please check, please.
Yeah.
I never knew, right? I always thought
Speak
that my
to
guardian,
someone.
yeah, I had
Even if
no
you don't
idea.
think so, even if you
Mhm.
don't think you are a victim, but you're disturbed by the chain of events that happened to you, go and speak to somebody.
That's a beautiful thing to say, absolutely, because sometimes you just don't know, or maybe you know someone who could be. Again,
Yeah.
everything you'll need will be in the description because we don't care about how many times you view the video. We don't care about how
No.
many people subscribe to the channel. If one person needs access to a service and we can provide it, we've done our job. We've done everything we need to do. And I never knew I was a victim until 8 months ago, and I'm 37 years of age. Okay, so not all the time do we know. Sometimes it takes somebody to sit us down, and for me, it was a family member that sat me down and explained to me why I have these complications, why I have, you know, the things that I have, and what actually happened. And it actually changed the entire course of my memory. Do you know what I mean? The things I remember that
Yeah.
triggered so many things for me.
It changed your entire perspective of your childhood. It really did. And I
Yeah,
think in some ways made you remember some things that you may
it
have,
did. Yeah,
yeah,
you're absolutely right. You are
written
a
off
hundred
before.
percent right. But
But
this is a clear, you know, reason that if you have any doubt, you need to go and check. If you have a health professional that you feel like has maybe went over the bounds of what is safe, of what is expected, if you feel that you've ever been in any clinical setting and you do not feel comfortable, it is your right as a patient to ask for another doctor, another
yeah,
nurse, and you don't have to give a reason. And it's the same as getting into a taxi, especially in the United Kingdom. A lot of us don't know that we don't have to get in the first one. You can choose any taxi you feel
yeah,
comfortable with, and you do not have to explain why either. So
no,
if you go to a hospital, a healthcare setting, a dentist, I don't care where it is, if you feel that your professional, healthcare professional, has stepped over a little boundary there, has maybe gotten a bit too close, has taken something a bit too far, or has
or
been
you just
extremely
don't
rude to
trust
you,
them, or if
yeah,
you
you
just
are
don't
allowed to
trust them,
report it.
your
Yeah,
instincts are there protecting you for a reason.
Your gut
absolutely.
instinct.
Absolutely, 100%. Now,
So all of these cases have been chosen because they're all healthcare givers who
Hmm.
have crossed the line,
Yep.
but every case is slightly different.
Yeah, they are. They really are. And it could be anything. And I will say something, even though I grew up and I realised, and I was sat down and told that I actually am a survivor, a guardian that had Munchausen's. I just want to say that none of this triggers me. And I really need
Mhm.
to be clear on it. And when I choose to speak on it, it's because I'm healing and I'm allowed to. And people that have been through things are allowed to talk about them. And that's how we process. But, I am not triggered by any kind of crime, any kind of thing like that. That's why I do what I do and I co-host with Gypsy because we've been through a lot of abuse and none of this sort of triggers us. Instead, we want to put it over in a way that you can understand better. And there's nothing, I don't feel like there's a better way to learn about something than from people that have been through abuse and people that have been through things like that. I do think it is a really good way to
Yeah.
to take to take facts away, isn't it? And I know people do get triggered by things, and listen, that's absolutely, you're right. And if this video is not for you, there's so many more on the channel, and you're welcome to go and click on another one. But if you have made it this far without being triggered, then sit down. Maybe this is your time to go and put the kettle on and get yourself a wee brew whilst we're having a
Mhm.
chat, and come back and be ready for the next one, because you really will learn something here, and there is always going to be, when we talk about anything controversial, there is always links in the description. And please know that neither myself, Gypsy, or our researcher, Amy Lou, has been triggered by any of these events. We are all women who do this of their own free will. And I'm sure
Yeah.
you ladies are quite happy with me saying that, aren't you?
Oh,
Oh
absolutely.
yeah, I agree.
Right.
Placid, so you're all right here. So,
Mhm.
right, guys, that was Beverly Allen. Now, I'm going to pass you over to the beautiful Gypsy, who is going to move you over to another deadly case. Take it away, Gyps.
So, case number 3 that we're looking at is Charles Cullen, the deadly nurse. Charles Cullen worked as a nurse for more than 15 years across multiple hospitals. During that time, he secretly administered lethal doses of medications to patients. Victims included men and women who were already vulnerable due to illness or age. Hospitals are built on trust. Patients arrive frightened, vulnerable, and often fighting for their lives. They trust that every doctor, nurse, and healthcare worker around them is committed to one goal: helping them recover. For more than a decade, patients in hospitals across New Jersey and Pennsylvania believed that they could trust a nurse named Charles Cullen. By the time authorities finally stopped him in 2003, investigators had uncovered one of the most disturbing healthcare crime cases in American history. Charles Cullen admitted to killing numerous patients during his nursing career. He was ultimately convicted of multiple murders, and investigators believe that the true number of victims may never be known. Some estimates suggest he could have murdered hundreds of people, making him one of the most prolific serial killers ever identified. This is the story of Charles Cullen, the man who became known as America's Angel of Death. Charles Edmund Cullen was born in West Orange, New Jersey in 1960. His childhood was marked by tragedy and instability. His father died when he was still an infant, and his mother was killed in a car accident when Cullen was a teenager. Later accounts describe a troubled young man who struggled with depression and made multiple suicide attempts throughout his life. After high school, Cullen enlisted in the United States Navy. Following his military service, he trained as a nurse and entered the healthcare profession during the 1980s. On the surface, he appeared to be just another hospital employee. Behind the scenes, however, something far darker was unfolding. A career that spanned many hospitals. Over the course of approximately 16 years, Cullen worked at numerous medical facilities in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Investigators later discovered a pattern that would become central to the case. Concerns would emerge, questions would be raised, then Cullen would move on to another hospital. In several instances, he left facilities before suspicions could fully develop into criminal investigations. The fragmented nature of the healthcare system meant that warning signs at one institution were not always effectively communicated to the next. As a result, Cullen continued working and patients continued dying. Investigators determined that Cullen used his position as a nurse to administer lethal doses of medication to patients. According to the court records and later investigations, he often used drugs such as digoxin or insulin, introducing dangerous or fatal amounts into patient systems. Some victims were critically ill, while others had been recovering and were not expected to die. What made the crimes especially difficult to detect was the environment in which they occurred. Patients die in hospitals every day. Unexpected complications happen. Medical emergencies occur without warning. Cullen exploited those realities, using them as a cover for his crimes. For years, many deaths were viewed as unfortunate medical outcomes rather than potential murders. The case finally began to unravel in 2003. At Somerset Medical Center in New Jersey, hospital officials and medical experts became concerned about a number of unusual patient deaths and medication incidents. Reviews of medical records pointed towards possible intentional misuse of medications, and authorities were alerted. Investigators began examining patient histories, medication records, and work schedules. Once again, a familiar pattern appeared. Charles Cullen was repeatedly connected to suspicious incidents. The evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. One of the most important figures in the investigation was nurse Amy Loughran, a colleague who helped authorities understand what was happening and assisted investigators during the case. As detectives gathered evidence, Cullen eventually began cooperating with investigators. What followed stunned even seasoned law enforcement officers. He admitted to killing patients. The scale of the crimes quickly expanded beyond what authorities had initially imagined. What had started as a local investigation rapidly became a national story. After his arrest in December 2003, Cullen confessed to numerous killings. Court proceedings eventually resulted in convictions and guilty pleas covering murders in both New Jersey and Pennsylvania. He received multiple consecutive life sentences. Authorities confirmed at least 29 victims, while Cullen himself admitted to as many as 40 killings. Investigators and researchers have suggested that the actual number could be significantly higher, although many cases can never be conclusively proven because records no longer exist or evidence was lost over time. The true death toll may never be known. One of the most troubling aspects of the Cullen case is not only the murders themselves, but how long they continued. Investigations revealed systemic failures within parts of the healthcare industry. Hospitals sometimes suspected misconduct but lacked conclusive evidence. In some instances, employment concerns were handled administratively rather than being aggressively pursued through criminal investigations. As Cullen moved between institutions, critical information did not always follow him. The result was a devastating cycle. Questions were raised, jobs changed, and the killing continued. The Cullen case sparked widespread discussion about hospital oversight, patient safety, and how healthcare facilities handled concerns about employees. His crimes also became the subject of books, documentaries, and the film The Good Nurse, which focused on both the murders and the efforts to stop him. For many families, however, the case is not a story about healthcare reform or criminal investigations. It is a story about loved ones who entered hospitals seeking care and never came home. The story of Charles Cullen is a chilling reminder that trust can be weaponized. As a nurse, he occupied one of the most respected positions in healthcare. Patients trusted him, families trusted him, colleagues worked beside him. Yet behind that professional image was a killer operating in plain sight. For more than a decade, Charles Cullen exploited the vulnerability of sick patients and the complexity of the medical system to conceal his crimes. By the time he was finally stopped, dozens of deaths had been linked to him, and investigators feared the real number might be far higher. His case remains one of the darkest chapters in the history of American healthcare. A story not only of murder, but of missed warnings, institutional failures, and the devastating consequences when trust is betrayed by the very people entrusted to protect life.
And this just shows you that it's an all over global thing, right? It's
Hmm.
not just a UK thing.
Yeah. And I
Mhm.
think that he doesn't fall into the hero complex category or
No.
the Munchausen by proxy category. He falls into a category of someone who was killing for the sake of killing.
Like
And
killing for
again,
enjoyment.
yeah, but he's not a chaos killer though. So
No.
it's like it doesn't matter who you are, he's going to kill you, but
Mhm.
it's not chaotic. It's still methodical. It's not messy.
Well, the fact
Yeah,
that
but
he every time suspicion started to get raised, or people started to look at him sideways, he changed jobs, he changed location.
Yeah, he
that's what I
made
mean.
it
It's thought
difficult. It
out.
was
It
not
was
easy.
methodical.
Yeah,
It
Yeah,
was
it was
yeah,
really
yeah.
methodical.
thought out.
hmm
And it's like you can also tell he almost got a kick from it because he admitted to it
Hmm.
and then
Yeah,
some.
straight away.
And
So it's
he's
Didn't
like
like,
even
he
try
was
and
to
this
fight
one,
it.
and that one, and this one, and that one.
Yeah,
kind of like, oh, look what I've done.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like he was proud of what he'd done.
I think they say in a lot of cases serial killers want to get caught, and I think he falls into that category.
A
I
lot of serial
agree.
killers is like the public view of it as well. They like the public eye. So it's kind
Yeah,
of like the more that I admit to, the more, in a sense, famous I'm going to
yeah.
be, and what can I
That's
get out
right.
of this
Yeah,
now?
I
It's the
completely agree.
notoriety. It's the
Yeah, it really
notoriety.
is. No, I
Hmm.
agree with that. And I also think as well with the amount of healthcare killers we're talking about tonight, it may leave a few people thinking, well, I'm out.
Yeah. But what you have to remember is for the 6 cases that we're talking about, there's approximately 6 million healthcare workers who don't do this shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, 100%. And what did you think researching this one, Amy? How did you feel doing that?
Well, as I say, that's the vibe that I got. I mean, as I say, reading about him, it was like you say, it gave me a different killer, different aspect, but it gave me almost like the Jeffrey, I can never say his last name, Dahmer vibe,
Dharma.
where, yeah, after he did it, he was proud of it.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah,
said it's like he wanted
definitely.
the fame from it, and he said the films and documentaries and everything that was done afterwards, it was like he has no
They
remorse for
do
what he
it for the
did.
notoriety. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
feel like he was a chameleon, you know what I mean? He was very much a social chameleon.
yeah,
He wasn't worried where he was going. He was up for traveling. He was up for every time he went there. He had a new
uh-huh.
personality. He had a new,
Hmm.
likeness about him, a new suave.
Which then
All
also
of these
makes you,
things.
which then makes you think, did he have any disorders where you can change your personality? Do you know, almost like a
Yeah,
split
I think he
personality?
would
Is
be
that
a
why you can morph?
psychiatrist's wet dream.
Mm.
Yeah.
Like he literally would be one of the people that they would be fighting to, that like tears, faking it,
Well,
tears of a crime,
he,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
that sort of
clearly
stuff.
thrived. I mean, he had a tragic childhood with his father dying and then his mother dying. But
Yeah,
he clearly thrived in a structured environment. So
yeah, yeah,
he
he
thrived in the
definitely did.
Navy. He thrived in nursing, which is a
hmm
structured environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that is a clear indication that there is something psychological going on.
Because that's almost like childhood trauma, and a very
Yeah.
common childhood trauma, which obviously I suffer with, is BPD or EUPD. And
Hmm.
within that disorder, you can morph to suit your situation.
Yeah.
You can change up who you are to fit into a
Yeah.
scenario or a person or a job. And it kind of makes me
Yep.
think, I wonder if he had something like that going on.
And I think if we're talking about childhood trauma as well, Richard Ramirez suffered great childhood trauma. Like
Yeah.
his childhood was horrific. And I think that a lot of the people that we talk about tend to have been sort of raised out of abuse, or for wanting a better
Yeah.
word, they were not brought up, they were like dragged up. But at the same time, so was a lot of people when they don't go about killing people, when they don't go
Yeah.
about,
Yeah, yeah.
hurting people. So again, is it the mentality? Is it the community? Is it the surroundings? Is
It
it
it brings up the nature versus nurture argument
Yeah, it
Yeah.
again.
really does. It does. And this keeps coming up.
Yeah.
It's a
But
very
it's
hard one to
true.
argue, as you say, because there's people you can say who have childhood trauma who grow up to be absolutely amazing, wonderful people, but then you have
Yeah.
also at the same time people brought up, I don't know a way to say it other than with a silver spoon, and
Yeah.
they've turned out to be absolute nut jobs.
Well, that's it.
Exactly.
I mean,
It's
look at
very,
exactly. I mean, look at Harold Shipman. He had he could have stopped at any point before he did, and he was still wealthy. He was still
Mhm.
very well liked. He was very upper class in his community. You know, he was idolized by a lot of his patients. He could have stopped at any time, and he would have had enough money to do him out the rest of his natural life. He
Yeah.
had enough assets to do him out, and he had no one to leave them to. So, you know, he very was a grand man and has,
By all intents and purposes, what I got from doing a really deep background check on Harold Shipman was he was a very controlling, very rigid, very militant type of person in his family relationships.
yeah, and I quite believe that. And you know, these are the type of relationships that never last because they are created out of fear and they're dominated. And there's a difference in dominating someone respectfully and dominating someone out of fear. And I think that this is where certain people, especially narcissists, Gypsy, I don't know if you'll agree,
Yeah.
narcissists can't find
yeah,
that line, right?
Mhm.
A narcissist cannot find the line of like a consensual domination, like a dynamic where you always have an alpha and a beta, or you know what I mean.
Mhm.
And
yeah,
dynamics where you have two alphas generally never work out. But
no,
Yeah.
what is though is if you respect someone out of fear, that's not respect. You can't earn it out of fear.
mm,
You have to earn it out of trust. You have to earn it out of loyalty and care and nurture. And
Mhm.
this is what a narcissist and a
Respect.
psychopath as well, they miss it. They don't have it. Now, a narcissist can imitate it, but they can't keep it up. And a psychopath
Mhm.
has no idea how to do it.
no,
You
they
know, a
don't have true
psychopath will stand
feeling
in the
until
mirror
they,
and practice crying
yeah,
until they look like they're crying. And that's the difference. And I do think that he definitely would fit into the character.
yeah,
At least he would be, I would say, a sociopath at least, but I would put him right
hmm
in the psychopath pile, 100%.
yeah. Well, they don't have true emotions, do they? And
No.
No,
like, false
and
emotions,
he
and
never.
maybe that's why he felt like killing wasn't such in his mind a bad thing because he didn't have the remorse or the feeling behind it. They were just
And I'm
Mhm.
straightforward.
shocked as well that he went to the Navy because, you know, with the fact that obviously he went on to be a serial killer, I would have personally thought that if he had joined any forces, it would have been the armed forces and it would have been an army or it would have been something where he was able to go out into battle and hurt people. But then again, these people don't want to get hurt, so they don't want to put themselves in the line of fire, but they want the
Mhm.
glorification of saying that
Exactly.
they serve in the country. And I'm not saying the Navy do any less work than the Army. That is not what I mean. I just mean the front line is different, is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah,
Because the front line is extremely different. And this is where I think that he could, for particularly in his case, this is why he did that. And there's just no way that even if he never got caught, there's no way he'd have been able to stop himself. He'd have been
No.
like going all the way down Route 66 and completing it. Do you know what I mean? He'd have been the male
Yeah.
version of Eileen Morehouse. I honestly believe it. I honestly believe it. Do you want to tell us about the next case I'm going to be presenting to our beautiful audience?
Yes. So the next case that Quinn is going to be presenting is the case of Elizabeth Wetlofer, and she is a nurse who was in Ontario in Canada. So I'm going to allow um, Quinn to present Elizabeth Wetlofer to you.
Right, guys, let's get into all the good stuff because you know that's what we like. So we are going to start with the crimes. Elizabeth Wetlofer worked in nursing homes caring for elderly residents between the years of 2007 and 2014. She killed several patients by administering insulin overdoses. Her victims were elderly individuals who depended entirely on professional care for their well-being. Long-term care homes are meant to be places of comfort. They care for some of society's most vulnerable people, elderly residents who rely on nurses and caregivers for safety, dignity and compassion. Families entrust staff with the well-being of loved ones who can no longer fully care for themselves. In southwestern Ontario, many families believed their relatives were receiving exactly that kind of care. Instead, some of them were being targeted by one of the deadliest healthcare killers in Canadian history. Her name was Elizabeth Wetlofer, a registered nurse working in several long-term care facilities. Wetlofer eventually confessed to murdering 8 elderly patients and attempting to harm 6 others between 2007 and 2016. Her crimes exposed serious shortcomings within Ontario's long-term care system and led to widespread public outrage across Canada. This is the story of Elizabeth Wettlaufer, the nurse who killed the very people she was supposed to protect. Elizabeth Tracy May Beth Wettlaufer was born in Ontario in 1967 and later studied nursing at Conestoga College after earning a degree in religious education and counselling. In 2007, she began working at Care Assistant Care, a long-term care home in Woodstock, Ontario. Colleagues initially regarded her as a caring and professional nurse, but behind that professional image, Wettlaufer was struggling. Records later showed that she battled substance abuse and alcoholism. During her employment, she faced multiple disciplinary actions involving medication-related errors, and she was eventually dismissed from her position in 2014 following a serious medication incident. At the time, nobody knew that something even more disturbing had been happening for years. According to her later confession, Wettlaufer began attacking residents whilst working at Care Assistant Care, and her weapon was insulin. By injecting elderly residents with insulin when they were not supposed to receive it, she could cause catastrophic drops in blood sugar that often appeared to be natural medical emergencies. Many of her victims were elderly people suffering from complex health conditions. When they died, their deaths did not immediately raise any suspicion. The murders blended into the routine realities of life inside a long-term care facility. And this is precisely what made them so difficult to detect. Wettlaufer eventually confessed to killing 8 seniors and attempting to harm 6 others. Her victims were residents entrusted to her care in nursing homes and care facilities across southwestern Ontario. And among the 8 murder victims were James Silcox, who was 84, Gladys Millard, who was 87, Helen Matheson, who was 95, Mary Zurowinski, who was 96, Helen Young was 90, Maureen Pickering was 79, and Arpad Horvath was 75. Morris Granite was 84. These were individuals living out the final years of their lives in places intended to provide care and security. Instead, some encountered a killer hiding behind a nurse's uniform. For years, Wettlaufer moved through healthcare facilities despite repeated concerns about her conduct. According to reports, she was suspended multiple times for medication-related issues, and she struggled to maintain employment after leaving Care Assistant Care. She reportedly lost jobs due to medication incidents and other workplace concerns. Yet these murders remained undiscovered. Because many victims were elderly and already in poor health, few people questioned whether their deaths might have been intentional. What appeared to be ordinary medical decline was, in some cases, homicide. The case broke open in a remarkable way. You see, unlike many healthcare killers who are exposed primarily through forensic investigations, Wettlaufer ultimately confessed. In 2016, she disclosed her crimes whilst receiving treatment. Authorities were informed and a police investigation followed. She later admitted to killing 8 seniors with insulin injection and attempting to harm others. During a videotaped police interview, she acknowledged that she knew her actions were wrong, and she understood that the insulin doses she administered would be lethal. For victims' families, the confession was both shocking and heartbreaking. Many had spent years believing their loved ones had died naturally, and Wettlaufer was arrested in October 2016. In 2017, she pleaded guilty to 8 counts of first-degree murder, 4 counts of attempted murder, and 2 counts of aggravated assault. During her sentencing, the court had emotional statements from families whose lives had been permanently changed. The judge described Wetlofer as a predator and rejected any notion that she had acted out of mercy. She was sentenced to life imprisonment. This case instantly became one of the most significant criminal prosecutions in modern Canadian healthcare history. But as the details emerged, a troubling question followed. How had a nurse with a history of medication-related concerns been able to continue working whilst repeatedly harming patients? A major public inquiry was launched to examine failures within Ontario's long-term care and regulatory systems. The inquiry looked at hiring practices, reporting systems, overnight mechanisms, and communication failures that may have allowed the crimes to continue undetected. The findings prompted calls for sweeping reforms aimed at protecting vulnerable residents and improving accountability across the healthcare system. The Wetlofer case remains one of Canada's most disturbing examples of healthcare-related murder. Unlike sudden acts of violence committed in public, these crimes occurred quietly behind the walls of care homes among people who were often unable to defend themselves. For many families, the betrayal was almost impossible to comprehend. The person trusted to dispense medication, monitor symptoms, and provide comfort was the very person responsible for the danger. The story of Elizabeth Wetlofer is not only a story about murder, it's a story about trust, vulnerability, and institutional failure. For nearly a decade, elderly residents in Ontario care facilities were harmed by a nurse who used her medical knowledge to conceal deadly acts behind the appearance of routine care. By the time she confessed, 8 people had been murdered and others had survived serious attacks. Her crimes forced Canada to confront difficult questions about patient safety, oversight, and accountability in long-term care. And they serve as a sobering reminder that the greatest threat to vulnerable people can sometimes come from the very individuals they trust most. This is astounding. Nobody caught her. She
Yeah,
confessed
she
all
wasn't
by
caught.
herself.
Hmm.
How?
Well, she confessed. She went into therapy about her substance abuse.
Uh-huh.
What she failed to remember is one of the things that happens when you are in a therapy session is everything is secret, with only one exception, and that is if
Uh-huh.
you cause harm to yourself or others, then
Uh-huh.
every rule goes out of the window. The moment she told her therapist that she harmed someone, that client client confidentiality rule went right out of
Patient
the window.
Yeah,
confidentiality,
the
yeah.
gig was up, right? That was it. There was
Hmm.
nothing. But do you think that, right? So I'm going to come back to the hero thing again just for a whole
Yeah.
second because I know she wasn't trying to save them, but, and it's notoriety as well, a bit of the God complex. Do you think because she wanted fame, she wanted to be discovered? Because I think this way, right? She would never have opened her mouth to anybody if she never wanted to be caught.
Hmm.
She actually
And as
confessed
someone
because
who
she
works in the
wanted it.
healthcare profession, she would have known about the harm to self or others rule, by
Mhm.
the
Oh
way.
yeah, absolutely, 100%, because it counts. So listen, it counts for nurses and doctors as well. If you're on your
Hmm.
deathbed and you confess to a doctor or a nurse about a serious crime or any crime, they are bound by a duty of care to you and the people you're confessing you've hurt to report this. And this is
Yep.
no, in this case, this is every single case. So she
Yep.
knew because she took the oath as well. So she
I
very
think
well
she,
knew.
I think she bottled going to the police and giving herself up, and she told her therapist knowing that this would happen.
She wanted notoriety and fame, and I don't care what anybody says. And I know she never had the onions to get in there, right, and to confess to the police herself. But
Hmm.
she basically did because if she never said anything to this psychologist or psychiatrist, therapist, however you want to label it, if she never spoken there, it never would have come out. She
Oh no,
wanted
absolutely. You'd have got away with
her.
it.
So what do you make, girls, right? Tell me of her medical screw-ups of the time she mismedicated people. Is this her
That's
trying
a
to harm
massive
patients?
thing. As
Yeah,
someone
but
who's
was she
medication
trying to harm
trained,
patients though and got caught or never did it right? Or was it a mistake because she had an addiction? How do you feel?
I think she
as
got
someone who's
caught.
medication trained, I can
Mm-hmm.
testify to how many safeguards there are in the way
Mm-hmm.
of medications. Okay, you cannot dispense medication unless you have gone through the medication training. Whether
Mhm.
you
Mm-hmm.
work as a care assistant, whether you work as a nurse, it doesn't matter. You have to go through the medication training, which you know I
Mm-hmm.
went through. You've seen my certificate.
Yeah.
Um, so I know the safeguards that are in place, and those safeguards that are in place now are in place because of people like her.
Yeah, definitely. I
Because
agree.
people can abuse that authority over patients. If you have an elderly patient that maybe has dementia or Alzheimer's or something, they're not going to know what medication they're on.
No, they're not. They're not. And this is the thing, right? Is she has had the training, she's had the care because she was a nurse, right?
Yeah,
So tell me, right, was she accidentally harming these patients because she tried to kill them and never managed to do it? Was this practice? Or was this her addiction leaving her to make these mistakes? What do you think?
I think that she made a mistake the first couple of times and then she got off on the thrill of having that
Amy?
control, that power.
I think she just got caught. I think she always wanted to do it and she just got caught. Because insulin, for a start, I mean, my dad was diabetic and I gave him insulin, and you know what to take, you're told what
Hmm.
dosage, like you know exactly what to do.
And you know
Whether she
exactly
whether
how
she
to
had
monitor the sugar
yeah,
levels and
whether she had an addiction or not, she knew exactly what she should and shouldn't be taking. And I think she just got caught.
yeah.
I think she always wanted to do it. I don't think there was no oops, I didn't mean to. I think it was just she got
So
caught
what do you
and
guys think? Do you guys think that are you on the track with Amy? Are you on the track with Gypsy? Leave us a comment and let us know how you feel about it. How do you
Yeah,
feel about
it's
her?
really
How do you
interesting to
feel?
know.
Yeah, do you think that this was a screw up because of her addiction and then she got the bug? Do you think she always wanted to do it and was always going to do it? My question, ladies, is she get fired from so many jobs, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
For the screw up of the
Why was she not
medication, and
blacklisted? Why was she
that's
not
where I'm going.
blacklisted? Yeah.
What do you think? What's your theory? Tell me, why wasn't she?
Well,
maybe they I
I think
know I mean she was a carer, aren't they? And carers are deeply cried out for.
she
And
was a
I think
nurse, actually. She was a nurse, not a carer. She was a nurse who worked in care homes.
sorry, I mean in care homes in general, I know they cry out, even
Yeah.
for nurses, carers, like anyone to work in there. Um and I think that they maybe had to employ her because they couldn't maybe get the staff there and she was the only one maybe willing to do it.
Oh, the
Um
care facilities are notoriously underfunded. Staff are
mhm.
massively underpaid, unappreciated, and work long
Yeah.
hours. And they do literally that they will cut corners just to have the
Yeah.
staff on board.
So I'm wondering then, girls, with the whole medication thing and nobody said anything when they saw it there, and we know there's no legislation in place after that.
Hmm.
How do you feel about all of this always being put in place after the fact? Do you think that, the health board and, healthcare directors and the people at the top of the chain essentially, do you think that all of this should have been foreseen anyway and things should have been put
It's
in place? Or
it's
do
not
you agree
even it's
that they're
not even
adapting to
foreseen.
the. Mm-hmm.
I know for a fact from my own experience that carers and nurses scream from the rooftops. This needs to be handled
Yeah.
better. That needs to be monitored better.
Mhm.
Nurses are screaming from the
Yeah.
rooftops
Yeah.
every single day, every single shift. This patient is in the wrong facility. This facility is not equipped to handle this patient. They need to be moved. They're ignored. We are not
Mm-hmm.
qualified to look after this patient. They are ignored. You know,
Yeah. I agree with you. Even carers.
Yeah,
I know we're talking about today, but even carers today, they're being made to do jobs that they are not qualified for.
yeah.
And this is a problem that still goes on, and
And
it
it's a problem
falls to
that
the higher
I
ups.
was telling Beth about when I was telling Quinn about when I was working in that environment.
Mm.
We'd
So
had
I want
patients
to
that
be
we
a
were
little.
not
Oh,
qualified to care
sorry.
for.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to be a bit more controversial before we move on, girls, because you know that I have all the questions.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, so listen, the drug of choice, right? I want to talk about it for just for a second.
Mm.
Yep.
Insulin seems to be the drug of choice for a lot of these healthcare professionals that we
The
find out
silent killer.
are hurt. Yeah, they're hurting people, right? And it
Hmm.
always seems to be something like insulin that they're using. Now, I'm not medication trained or anything like that. I'm a layman. I'm the same as the audience at this point. But I'm
Hmm.
asking because I know that our audience are going to be thinking, why do you think it was insulin that is such a popular drug of choice within
I
these
can
serial
answer that
killers?
question. I can
Right.
answer
So
that
tell us
question really
why
simply.
is it?
Insulin tends to be the drug of choice because it's a compound that's made naturally within the body,
Yep.
and it's
Right.
not something that shows up on a common blood test. You have to
Oh, right.
specifically test for it.
Hmm.
It doesn't show up on a basic common blood test.
Right.
And
Okay. Okay.
also, it can be administered under the tongue, where an injection site would never be identified.
Yep.
Oh,
Um,
right. Okay.
but where they are fucking up, and I am going to use the word fucking up, I'm going to
Do it.
swear,
Do it.
where they are making the mistake is the body creates natural insulin. What they are injecting these bodies with is synthetic insulin, and
Hmm.
those are two
Right.
completely different compounds. Synthetic insulin can be tested for.
I,
Oh, okay.
I
So
think
if it is,
sorry,
sorry, Amy, what were you saying, my
I was
love?
just going to add on to what Gypsy was saying, because obviously I was a carer for my dad who was diabetic. They were saying as well, a lot of elderly patients, especially those who administer themselves,
Hmm.
accidentally over or under themselves, so they put themselves into
Yeah,
like
they do.
is it ketone shocks? So that's another
Yeah.
way that it
Ketoacidosis,
goes.
yeah.
Yeah, that's another way that it goes undiagnosed because people do accidentally do it themselves. And as like Gypsy said, it's something your body naturally produces, and it's known as the silent killer. And it's still even today. That's how a lot of people do it. Is
Yeah.
insulin. I think the other one is it salt. I think is the other one
Yeah,
that
salt
is
and
used.
also air bubbles in the IV
So
Hmm.
that's where I was
is a
going next
massive one.
because we did discuss a case earlier with Beverly Allett who did actually
Hmm.
do that. So
Hmm.
can you explain why or how an air bubble would cause death and how it is another method of choice for people in these positions to be hurting people? What does an air bubble actually do, Jips?
So it does a number of things. First of all, if you think about when you cut yourself or when you graze your knee,
Hmm.
when your blood hits the air, what does it do?
Coagulates.
It it coagulates, it
Yeah,
clots.
coagulates it. Yeah.
Right, okay,
Trying to be
okay.
fancy.
Sorry, guys, I'm not
So
like our Amy Lure or Gypsy. I am very much asking all the things you are thinking because I do not know.
so
So let's find out.
So what it does is it firstly, the impact of the oxygen on the blood, it will oxygenate the blood, which will coagulate the blood within that
Which then that
bloodstream.
creates a scab. Am I right then?
It's like a
Well,
blood
it
clot.
creates a blood clot
Oh,
within the
okay.
system. Sometimes that is enough, but also what you have to remember is you're also putting an air bubble into what is essentially a tube.
Right,
And
okay.
when you put that air bubble into that tube, it will block that tube. So you're creating clots and you're creating blockages within those veins.
So
That
I
clot
have,
will instantly travel up to the heart,
oh
Hmm.
goodness. Right, okay. And then that's how it happens.
and then that's it.
So I have another question before we move on to our
Hmm.
last case, if that's all right. Don't mind dancing one more. So
We got
these
two more.
deaths, oh, that's perfect then. So these deaths, right? Please tell me, are they painful? So the victims of these serial killers, the
Yes.
victims of these healthcare professionals, did they suffer?
Well, insulin,
Uh,
it sends your body into almost shock.
yeah,
And it's very, very uncomfortable, sweating, they can't breathe, they could be in and out of
it
consciousness,
will
they could
put
be
them into a
sick.
diabetic coma eventually.
Yeah, and it's deadly. I've witnessed obviously my dad go into one of them, and it is very scary to see, and it's not quick. Like, it's not an instant thing. It can happen over a couple of hours.
Yeah,
Um,
days even in some cases,
yeah,
depending on the amount.
yeah.
So it is definitely, these victims have suffered. It
Yeah,
is painful.
Mhm.
Oh
yeah.
goodness,
And an air
that's what makes it
embolism in
worse.
the vein is painful.
Yeah.
I will
Oh
tell you that.
God.
An air embolism in the vein is painful.
I mean, if it causes a
Oh
heart attack as well, I mean, I'm sure you would have seen Gypsy, like,
yeah, yeah.
seeing someone have a heart attack it
Well,
Yeah.
I
hurts.
go
Like,
into tax, so I completely understand the pain with
Mhm.
that because I get a lot of
Yeah,
pain when I end up like that. And, obviously, Gypsy, I'm not going to speak about your medical history, but, I know you
No,
suffer it as well.
I
So,
have,
it's painful.
yeah,
yeah.
it's very painful.
So now I feel like I've squeezed all of the questions out that the audience would have asked so far, and you're probably right in thinking this is a two-parter, guys. But if you are here, you're probably in part two now, and we are just about to move on to another nightmare healthcare case. Gypsy, do you want to tell us about this case?
So this is the case of Niels Hergel, and he became one of the most notorious healthcare killers in European history. Investigators found that he deliberately injected patients with drugs that caused life-threatening medical crises. According to court findings, he was convicted of murdering 85 patients. I'll just let you swallow that for a minute. 85
Yeah, thanks, because
patients.
I'm sat here like 85, like 85, or
Yeah.
eight, or was
I
it
was the
eight to
same.
five? Did you? I'm sat
Yeah, I was
here
the
like,
same. Yeah,
did she mean 5 to 8? And she said 8 to 5. You know how some
yeah,
people muddle their words up,
No,
and I'm like,
yeah,
what?
yeah.
85 patients, and investigators suspected the true number could be far higher,
Well, of course, because every time they get caught, they never actually get convicted for the amount of things they've done.
right?
We know that just ourselves as researchers. Eight to
Right.
five, I'm astounded. I'm not even joking. That is wild. Tell me. You have to tell me about it.
So hospitals are places where seconds matter. When a patient's heart stops, doctors and nurses rush into action. Lives can be saved through skilled teamwork, experience, and in these moments, healthcare workers are often viewed as heroes. In hospitals across northern Germany during the early 2000s, one nurse developed a reputation for being remarkably calm during emergencies. He always seemed to be there when patients suddenly crashed. He always seemed eager to help during resuscitations. What his colleagues did not realize was that in many of those emergencies, they had been created by the nurse himself. His name was Niels Hergel. By the time investigators uncovered the full scope of his crimes, Hergel had been convicted of murdering 85 patients, making him one of the most prolific serial killers in modern German history. Authorities have stated that the true number of victims may be significantly higher. This is the story of Niels Hergel, the nurse who turned saving lives into a deadly game. Niels Hergel was born in Wilhelmshaven, Germany in 1976. He came from a family with strong ties to nursing. His father worked as a nurse, and Hergel eventually followed the same career path, completing his training before working in hospital intensive care units. There was little in his background to suggest that he would one day become responsible for one of the largest murder cases in German criminal history. To colleagues, he initially appeared to be capable and committed healthcare professional. But behind that image was a horrifying pattern that was beginning to emerge. Between 1999 and 2005, Hergel worked at hospitals in Oldenburg, Delmenhorst in northern Germany. These were environments where seriously ill patients were treated every day. Deaths occurred naturally, cardiac arrests happened. Medical crises were part of normal hospital life. Hergel exploited that reality. According to investigators, he administered unauthorized medications to patients, deliberately triggering life-threatening emergencies. He would then join the frantic attempts to revive them. Sometimes the patients survived, many did not. Unlike some healthcare killers who targeted specific victims, Hergel's actions appeared to be driven by something different. Investigators concluded that he induced cardiac arrest so he could participate in dramatic resuscitations and gain recognition from colleagues. Prosecutors argued that he enjoyed the excitement and the praise associated with saving patients in crisis, even when he had created the crisis himself. The irony is chilling. The man celebrated for responding to the emergencies was often the person causing them. Long before Hergel was arrested, suspicions began to surface. At the Oldenburg Clinic, staff noticed unusually high numbers of resuscitations and deaths occurring during his shifts. One review found that a majority of these incidents were linked to times when Hergel was on duty. Doctors became concerned, questions, but decisive action did not immediately follow. Instead, Hergel was transferred within the hospital and eventually moved to another healthcare facility. The pattern would continue, and so would the deaths. When Hergel began working at a second hospital in Delmenhorst, the same troubling signs appeared. Unexpected emergencies occurred with alarming frequency. Mortality rates rose. Some colleagues viewed him as unusually connected to critical incidents, yet no one had enough evidence to prove what was happening. Years later, investigations would reveal that many of the patients who suddenly deteriorated had been given medications that they were never supposed to receive. What appeared to be tragic medical complications were, in many cases, deliberate attacks. In 2005, Hergel's luck finally ran out. He was caught administering an unprescribed drug to a patient at the Delmenhorst Hospital. This incident triggered criminal proceedings and eventually led investigators to revisit numerous suspicious deaths. What initially appeared to be a single case of misconduct soon becomes something much larger. As investigations dug deeper, they began exhuming bodies, analyzing medical records, and reconstructing years of hospital activity. The scale of the case was staggering. The investigation expanded over many years. Authorities reviewed hundreds of deaths connected to hospitals where Hergel had worked, and the process involved forensic examinations, expert analysis, and extensive reviews of medical records. As evidence accumulated, prosecutors became convinced that Hergel's crimes were far more extensive than originally believed. He eventually admitted responsibility for numerous killings, although investigators concluded that it meant that many more deaths could never be fully proven because evidence had been lost, records were incomplete, or patients had been cremated. In 2019, a court in Oldenburg convicted Hergel of 85 murders and sentenced him to life imprisonment. By that point, he was already serving a life sentence from early convictions connected to patient deaths. The verdict established him as one of the most prolific convicted serial killers in German history. Yet even then, investigators suggested that the real number of victims might never be known. Estimates have ranged far beyond the 85 murders proven in court. The Hergel case triggered widespread criticism of hospital oversight and accountability. Many observers questioned how warning signs had been missed for so long and how Hergel had been able to continue working despite growing suspicions. Investigations revealed missed opportunities to intervene years before his crimes were finally uncovered. For victims' families, those questions remain painful. Every missed warning represented another potential opportunity to save lives. The story of Niels Hergel is one of the most disturbing examples of medical betrayal ever uncovered. Patients entered intensive care units hoping to recover. Families trusted healthcare professionals responsible for their loved ones. Instead, many encountered a nurse who deliberately placed them in mortal danger. Unlike killers who sought financial gain or revenge, Hogel appeared to pursue something even more unsettling: the excitement and recognition that came from responding to crises of his own making. By the time he was finally stopped, dozens of lives had been lost, and Germany was forced to confront serious failures in its healthcare system. It remains a haunting reminder that the appearance of heroism can sometimes conceal something far darker, and that trust, once broken in a place dedicated to healing, leaves scars that can last long after the hospital doors have closed. I think that's a case of an outstanding case of hero. Of the hero company.
I couldn't agree more. That's literally what was going through my head.
Yeah,
That's a prime
85
example.
though. Could you imagine how many he's not actually been caught for? Or, and this is what I'm saying, and this is in Germany, right? Now you
Yeah.
have to think, like, it's out that way they have the maddest cases. Like, look at Josef Fritzl. Like,
Yep.
he was out that way as well. Like, the what they have, the limitations that they have on their healthcare, their police force, that, like, it shows from the start. And it just shows you as well that it's no actually did not actually get better by the time Josef Fritzl was caught.
No.
You know, this stuff
What
is
stood out
wild.
for me
85 victims, come on.
It's
What
leaked
stood out for
85 as
me
well.
was the fact that the 85 victims were his second lot of life sentences. He was
Right?
already serving a life sentence for another collection of mishandled medication cases before, and it was already serving a life sentence before these 85 cases were brought.
That's
This is what I'm
amazing.
saying about medication. Yeah, this is what I'm saying about medication. Like, it doesn't matter how much training they're going through, it doesn't matter how much training you give people. It's not always about can they do the job, right? A lot of people, 8 out of 10 people could go on a medication course and pass it. Right?
Mhm.
It's not about that. It's not about knowing how much insulin to give someone or how to be able to do it. What it is about being able to do it efficiently and effectively and to the honour, to the code that you stick by when you sign up to do
Yep.
anything. And I don't care if you're a GP or if you are a dentist or a dental nurse, it means nothing, right? If you have taken an oath and you have joined any healthcare facility and you have taken the oath to serve patients, the minute one medication fuck up has happened, it should be reported and it should go
Yep.
up the chain. It is that important. And that's what I was saying to you after we discussed the last case was how many more medicine fuck ups are we going to have to deal with as a society? How many more victims are the healthcare systems going to create before something solid is done about it? I genuinely think that all doctors and nurses need to go through a psychiatric evaluation before they are allowed to practice, because I think that to be able to be having the care of patients, to have someone's life in your hands, and I don't care what profession you are, people have died in the dentist chair before.
Yep.
Oh,
I do
absolutely.
not care what profession you have. If you are clinically looking after patients and you are administering any kind of medication, I believe you need to be evaluated. And I do believe that even psychiatrists should be evaluated by another psychiatrist, because at the end of the day, who is going to have the back of the healthcare professional? Who is going to have the back of the victims that have done it? How many people do it by accident and just need to be retrained? It is a genuine accident. They're tired. It is just whatever it may be. But how many people like him are doing this and not getting caught until it's massive?
Yeah, they're sliding under the radar. And listen, I knew that you would want me to give you this case because I
I
know that
am so stoked.
you are
Yes,
passionate about this case, which
I
is why
am.
it had to be included.
Yes, I
So
love you.
you're
I'm so
welcome.
happy. Right, and I'm not happy, but can I just say, I'm just happy that I get to talk about it because I am so passionate about this next case, guys, and I'm not joking. I have followed everything about this case, and I am so well versed in it. I have watched hours and hours of live feeding and podcasting in courtrooms and the interrogations, the whole thing. This is my jam. And as far as being able to report on one of your, and I know it sounds really sadistic to say, but one of your favorite cases or favorite crimes, but we do as podcasters have favorite cases
Yeah.
and favorite, we do. And this actually happens to be one of mine, and I'm just so stoked that you have included it on the channel and that I get to be the one to tell it. So
Take
buckle
it
up,
away.
guys. I'm about to take you on the journey of Lucy Letby. Now, this has been included by my best friend because she just knows that I jump all around with this case. It's my favourite. So let me take it away for you guys, okay? The Lucy Letby case is one of the most controversial and high-profile criminal cases in modern British history. Letby was a neonatal nurse at the Countess of Chester Hospital and was convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others whilst working on the hospital's neonatal unit between 2015 and 2016. The case attracted enormous public attention because the victims were some of the most vulnerable patients imaginable: premature and critically ill newborn infants, little tiny babies. At the same time, the case continues to generate debate due to ongoing legal challenges and criticism from some medical and statistical experts regarding aspects of the evidence used at trial. Letby's convictions, however, remain in force. Lucy Letby was a neonatal nurse employed at the Countess of Chester Hospital in northwest England. Concerns arose now after staff noticed what appeared to be an unusual increase in baby deaths and sudden collapses on the neonatal unit during 2015 and 2016. Clinicians became increasingly concerned about a pattern of incidents involving babies under Letby's care. The concerns eventually led to a police investigation known as Operation Hummingbird, which examined a series of deaths and non-fatal collapses on the unit. During the trial, prosecutors alleged that Letby deliberately harmed infants using a variety of methods, including injecting air into the bloodstream, poisoning them with insulin, and interfering with feeding mechanisms. Now, the prosecution relied on a combination of medical expert testimony, hospital records, blood test results, and circumstantial evidence. Now, this is very important. The prosecution also pointed to Letby's presence during numerous incidents, handwritten notes found in her possession that prosecutors argued were incriminating. Medical evidence that the prosecution claimed was consistent with deliberate harm rather than natural deterioration. The jury ultimately found her guilty of 7 murders and multiple attempted murders after hearing months of evidence. In August 2023, Letby was convicted of 7 counts of murder and 7 counts of attempted murder. She received whole life sentences, meaning that she's going to spend the remainder of her life in prison without the possibility of release. Following a retrial on one unresolved allegation in July 2024, she was convicted of an additional attempted murder charge and received a further whole life order. Now, a major aspect of the case extends beyond Letby herself, okay? Evidence presented after the convictions raised questions about how concerns raised by doctors were handled by hospital management. Senior clinicians had expressed worries about the rising number of incidents and attempted to escalate those concerns. As a result, the UK government established the Thorough Inquiry to examine events of the Countess of Chester Hospital and determine whether opportunities to protect patients were missed. Now, the inquiry has heard evidence from numerous witnesses and has focused on hospital policies, leadership decisions, and patient safety procedures. But, unlike many criminal cases, public debate did not end after the verdicts. Several medical and statistical experts have questioned aspects of the prosecution's evidence. Some experts argue that certain infant deaths and collapses may have had natural or medical explanations rather than a criminal case. Others have challenged parts of the statistical evidence presented during the investigation. Now, let me tell you, Letby has consistently maintained her innocence, although two applications for permission to appeal have been rejected. Her case is currently under review by the Criminal Cases Review Commission, the CCRC, which has the authority to refer a case back to court or appeal if it identifies grounds for reconsideration. It is important to note, guys, that as of now, her convictions have not been overturned and they do remain legally valid. The Lucy Letby case has had a profound effect on public confidence in healthcare and patient safety. The case raises difficult questions. I mean, how should hospitals respond with clinicians when clinicians raise concerns? Are current monitoring systems sufficient to identify unusual patterns of deaths? How should expert medical evidence be evaluated in complex criminal cases? What safeguards can protect vulnerable patients whilst also ensuring fair trials? The Lucy Letby case stands as one of the most significant criminal investigations in recent British history. A neonatal nurse entrusted with caring for premature and critically ill infants was convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder others, resulting in multiple whole life sentences. Yet the story remains unfinished. Ongoing reviews, expert disagreements, and the continuing thorough inquiry, these ensure that the case remains under intense scrutiny. Whatever failure developments occur, Whatever future developments occur, the case has already left a lasting impact on Britain's healthcare system, the criminal justice system, and public understanding of patient safety. Although each case is unique, investigators have identified several recurring themes: access to powerful medications, victims who are vulnerable or unable to defend themselves, positions of trust that reduce suspicion, ability to hide crimes among natural illness and death, and delayed investigations due to assumptions that healthcare workers act in the patient's best interests. Here we're going to examine the dark side of the white coat. Hospitals are meant to be places of healing. Their corridors echo with hope, relief, and recovery. Yet these cases reveal a chilling reality. Sometimes the greatest danger came not from disease, but from the very people entrusted to fight it. Guys, this case is close to my whole soul because I have investigated this since the whole thing blew up in the media, and I'm not here to to say anything about the victims or their families, or I'm not wanting to, I don't want to minimise what they've been through at all. It's horrific. But what I will say is that there is people fighting for Lucy Letby right now. They have concrete proof that she was not rotated to be working at the same time some of these babies died that she's convicted of. What do you make of the case? What do you make of Lucy?
I mean, for me, like having one of my children was on a neonatal ward, and for me, I was not allowed to stay there. And you do entrust these people to look after your children, especially babies who are vulnerable on that ward.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of like I know, obviously, my mum working in that sort of industry, you don't necessarily have to be on the rota. She could have been called in, and they've not put her
Mm-hmm.
down. So they could say, "Oh yeah, she wasn't rotated down," but who's to say she didn't have to come in on an emergency, so she wasn't put down on the rota? And not only that, but all the evidence that they would have had initially for committing her of 7 deaths and others harmed, they wouldn't have just done it for no reason. Do you know what I mean? They must have had a
No.
mountain of evidence against her to convict her, and for the fact two have already been denied appeals.
Yeah, but I'm not saying Lucy Letby never did all the crimes. I'm saying she never worked alone. And that,
Yeah.
how can you convict her for the killing of two babies she wasn't on a rota for? And saying that she had writings in her house, she took home patient files because she never had time to write it up at work. She was writing up notes at night.
Yeah.
Jips, what do you
Yeah,
make?
but
Tell me.
I mean, it's a massive conflict of patient confidentiality for notes to leave the hospital, first of all.
Absolutely.
But
I'm not saying
that
she's not a
that
killer.
in and of itself, that in and of itself is a sackable offence.
Yeah.
But that aside, it does not prove intent.
No.
I feel like the case against Lucy Letby is kind of on the flimsy side.
Yeah.
Do I think that she is guilty of negligence, and do I think that she is guilty of having the hero complex? Yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, my opinion. But do I think that she's responsible for all of the cases that were brought forward as potentially not?
No.
Yeah, it's kind
And
of
I
almost
agree with
like
you, Gypsy, because at the end of the day, I actually think that there was more than her. I'm not saying that I don't believe she's guilty, but I'm telling you that she was actually sentenced for two murders that she wasn't even in the hospital when these babies died.
it's kind of almost like because they've pinned her for a few of them, let's just pin her with for the rest of them.
Yeah,
Kind of like that type
but
of case. Like,
also her being present when the babies died doesn't necessarily mean that she wasn't the cause,
no.
because we don't know how long before her shift
Yeah, but
ended
she
and
had
those
a
babies
7 day
died.
holiday. No, there
Yeah.
was a yeah. She when one of the babies died, she had a 7 day holiday. So I have no knowledge or understanding of medication, but I mean, I would love any
Oh no,
healthcare
that a
professional to tell
7 day
me how
holiday would be, yeah, no, a 7 day holiday. Any crisis would have happened well within that time period.
she
Yeah.
did.
Right.
Absolutely, I believe, in my own opinion, hurt some of these children. She did,
Mhm.
but what I'm saying is she never did it by herself, and
No.
I will stand on that. And I'm not accusing certain people in the host. I am not like all of this is for entertainment purposes only. These are only opinions. These are not facts. But what I am saying is, I do not believe she did this herself. I don't. Take us through
No.
it, Gypsy. Tell me.
I
Tell me
feel like
about her.
Lucy Letby is another example of the hero complex. Also, I feel like she has been she's been given she's been accused of cases that she potentially did not commit,
Hmm.
and they've kind of lumped them in with all of the other cases.
Hmm.
Do I believe that she injured and hurt some children? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Do I believe that she's responsible for all of the cases that have been lumped on her? No, I don't. But her being innocent of one doesn't make her innocent of another. And the
Exactly.
same in turn, her being guilty of one does not make her guilty of another. All of these cases need to be looked at as individual cases, not as
Yeah.
one whole
You
thing.
cannot see me right now, but
Yeah.
I am bowing down to the Queen. Exactly, 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 exactly. More, there has to be more. There has got to be more
Yeah.
to this case. You cannot solidify a conviction in a case like that. And also, one of the babies, there is a documentary on YouTube about this. Just type in her name in the case and it will come up. There is a pediatric surgeon, a
Hmm.
pediatric doctor who specializes in premature babies, right?
Yeah.
And they're saying she pulled out his ventilator that came out. Now, she's saying that when she went into the room, it was out his mouth and that he had wriggled. Now, she was convicted for the murder of that baby because they argued that a premature baby would have been unable to wriggle that out
Well,
their mouth.
I know for a fact that that isn't the case, because I have seen
Exactly.
premature babies take ventilators and IVs out by wriggling about. Three of my children were in neonatal care. Um,
Yeah.
two of them almost passed away. And it's the neonatal care staff that saved two of my children.
And tell
But
me, can premature babies still cough?
yes,
Yeah.
Can
yes.
premature be? And this is the thing, this is what this doctor's arguing. He is arguing that when a premature child is on a ventilator, it doesn't actually have them breathe in and out, in and out. It actually vibrates their lungs. So
Well, there's
what?
there's there's multiple different ways of doing it. It depends on the equipment that that baby was on.
Mm.
Yeah,
So there is a ventilator and there is an oscillator. A ventilator forces air into the lungs in the usual way. An
yeah.
oscillator is the one that vibrates.
That's the one
And
I'm
it keeps
talking
what it
about,
does
honey.
is it keeps the alveoli that which are the sacs at the ends of all of the little tubes in your lungs. They're called
Yeah.
alveoli. And what the oscillator does is it keeps them open permanently, because what happens is with some babies, those sacs can close in between breaths and get stuck, like they stick
So that's
closed.
the one that vibrates, right? So is it
So an
possible, in
oscillator
your
is the one that
opinion,
vibrates.
so in your opinion, is it then possible for a premature baby to wriggle while vibrating and knock out that little?
Yeah, absolutely. If they're alert, then absolutely that it's completely doable.
And
I
who
think
You
are
it
we
know.
to
depends on
say
the
what?
age. I think it depends on how little the premature baby is as well, though. Like what
Hmm.
Yeah,
kind of
of course
premature are
it
we
does.
talking?
Yeah. But at the same time, it depends who put the ventilator in, and it wasn't Lucy Letby. She never actually attached the machine. So this baby was already on this when she came into work. She wasn't the one who put it in, and this is what the doctor's arguing. Did the doctor or the nurse or whoever put this machine on the baby, did they do it correctly? Was it loose? Is that how it was able? Nobody knows, because when you do this and when you go and do your job, you don't take pictures of every stage of your day.
No,
You don't
exactly.
take pictures of every stage of a task. So how can you then attribute that to, do you know what I'm trying to say,
Mm.
Gypsy? Like,
Yeah.
where's the
And the
balance,
thing is,
right?
neonatal doctors and nurses are learning all day, every day, literally all
Yeah.
day, every day, because no two cases are the same. I told you about my son Gorgie. When he was born with necrotizing enterocolitis. He was born to term, and necrotizing enterocolitis is something that is common in preterm babies. So he should never have had that. But he was born at 39 weeks, which is considered term. He had to have a total colectomy. His large intestine was removed at birth, and there was an infection in his stoma. So the wound where they brought the stoma out of his tummy, out of his abdomen, there was an
Mm-hmm.
infection there. And this doctor, they had tried everything. They had tried antibiotics. They had tried everything. And this doctor, and I will be forever grateful to this doctor, he had a eureka moment. And he said, listen, I want to try something. And it is a Hail Mary. At this point, it is a Hail Mary. If this doesn't work, nothing's going to work. And I said, okay, do what you need to do. And what he did was he went down to the canteen in the hospital and he got the sachets of sugar, pure sugar. And because they're in sachets, they're sterile, right? And every hour on the hour, he poured sugar into the wound because bacteria is attracted to sugar. It's attracted to the sugars in your blood. It's attracted to the sugars in your tissue. And that bacteria was attracted to that sugar, and every hour on the hour, and he stayed there for 3 days straight. And he
Wow.
cleaned that
That's
wound
amazing.
and he put
Mm.
sugar back on the wound. And now I have a 21-year-old son who is as flamboyant as hell,
Yeah, we love
um,
him all the way.
because of sugar.
And this is
That's
what I'm
amazing.
saying. This is, you cannot attribute anything if you are not there, and not all doctors and nurses go by the book and they don't go by what they're taught.
No.
Gypsy's just giving you a perfect example. Now, I know taking patients' notes home and writing things up at home is not, it is a sackable offence. But you go and be a nurse. You go and stand
Hmm.
for 12, 14, and 16 hours on a ward looking after patients all day, and sometimes not getting to eat or not getting to drink. I mean, they are so underrated and so underpaid. So
Yeah.
sometimes I do think they would break the rules. Sometimes I do think they would just chuck a couple of files in their bag and, do it at home. Do I think they're sharing it with everybody else? No. But do I think they're catching up whilst they've had a hot bath? Yeah. Do I think that's actually wrong? Not really. Like, I wouldn't, it's not something that I would ever scream about if my doctor had to take one of my files home or log into my patient file at home and update it because he's been there for 18 hours. But the thing that
Yeah.
I do disagree with, right? The thing I do completely disagree with is that people saying she's completely innocent. There is no smoke without fire, and
Mhm.
I do believe that. And I think that personally, with what I've seen, I honestly do think that there was more than one person hurting these children. And I think
Mhm.
that she's a patsy. She took the blame. I think they set her up. They knew they were going to get caught, and I think they've set her up. And everybody's entitled to their personal opinions,
Yep.
and that's mine. I think this lady has absolutely harmed these children, but I don't think she harmed them alone.
This is where she needs to speak up, though. I think if she wants to prove, let's not say not all of her innocence, but prove herself in some aspects, is she needs to speak up about it.
Yeah. But in
But what
order to
then
speak
will
up about that, she would then have to admit her culpability,
That's what
which
I'm
would
saying.
then
Like,
take
exactly?
she would
away
have to take
any
the
chance she's got
consequence
of
of it.
appealing the sentences.
If
Yeah,
she admits to some of it and says someone else was helping her, the courts of appeal will throw out her entire appeal to be released. She's on whole life sentences, and if she has good behaviour and if she, behaves in prison, she may be allowed to leave early. She may be allowed to breathe real air before she dies. And all of these things are in her mind. Like,
Mhm.
we know she's never going to walk free again, not unless something absolutely ingenious happens. And I'm not defending Lucy Letby in the slightest. I'm defending the victims. And wouldn't you, as a parent of a baby that was hurt, attacked, abused, or even killed by a healthcare professional, want to know the whole truth and how your
Yeah.
baby died?
of
I
course,
think
yeah.
I think that the parents are entitled to know the whole truth, and I think that the public are entitled to know the whole truth.
Yeah,
But the
because how
fact
are you
is,
trusting a doctor?
exactly. But the fact is that Lucy Letby is never going to come forward and say, yes, I did this, but this
You're right.
person did that,
You're
because
right.
then she will have to accept her whole life tariff.
Exactly. And that's why we will never know the full story. And that's why there is, I believe, in my opinion, at least one or two other people absolutely culpable, but they will walk free and they will never do it again because of what they saw happen to Lucy. They will never harm another patient again, but the itch will be
Mhm.
there. The whispers
Mhm.
will be there. And they have to go into wherever they may be now, every single day, wondering, is today the day? Is today the day? Is today the day? Because
Mhm.
they will never know. Guilty people are always suspicious. They always act guilty, and that's fact. And Gypsy can take us through that in a second. But
Yeah.
imagine you are the other persons that did this with Lucy, and you're going to work every day now. And you're carrying the, is this today I'm going to be caught? I wonder if someone will notice today. And what if there's two more other people? What if one of them gets the itch and starts doing it again and then gets them both caught? That has got to be a psychological game in itself, Gypsy, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And listen, I did do some research into the psychological background of these cases. If you want me to take you through that.
Yes, please do. I would be loving that if you did it.
Okay, so the stories of Shipman, Alec, Cullen, Wetlother, and Hogel um, serve as grim reminders that trust can be exploited by those who wear the mask of compassion. Long after the lights are dimmed and the wards fall silent, these cases still haunt the history of modern medicine, a shadow lingering in places where people go seeking help, never imagining that the hand reaching towards them might not be there to heal at all. One of the most disturbing aspects of healthcare killers is that many appear outwardly normal. They often build careers based in trust. compassion, professionalism. And psychologists and criminologists have proposed several explanations for why a tiny minority of healthcare workers commit such crimes, although motives can vary from case to case. So, number one is the desire for power and control. Many experts believe that some healthcare killers are motivated by a desire to exercise absolute control over life and death. Patients in hospitals are often vulnerable, dependent, and unable to challenge medical authority. For certain offenders, deciding who lives and who dies may provide a sense of power that they cannot obtain elsewhere. In Harold Shipman's case, investigators and commentators have frequently suggested that control may have been a key factor. He appeared to position himself at the ultimate authority over his patients' lives. The desire for power is something that develops over time, but could it be hidden within a person long before they enter a caring profession? Number two is the God complex, and we did discuss this a little earlier.
Yeah.
A related theory is sometimes called the God complex. This is not a formal psychiatric diagnosis, but a term used to describe individuals who believe that their judgment is superior to anyone else's. In healthcare, this can become dangerous if someone begins to see themselves as uniquely qualified to decide whether a patient should live or die. At what point does professional confidence become dangerous arrogance? Number three is hero syndrome. Some healthcare killers appear motivated by the need for attention and admiration. They may deliberately create medical emergencies so that they can save patients and be viewed as heroes. Investigators concluded that German nurse Niels Hogel sometimes induced life-threatening crises and then attempted dramatic resuscitations to gain praise from colleagues. But how much of our behavior is shaped by the desire of recognition from others? Number four, we have facetious disorder imposed on another, also known as Munchausen's by proxy. In some cases, offenders may deliberately make someone ill in order to receive attention, sympathy, or emotional satisfaction from the resulting medical drama. Beverly Alex crimes have been linked to this phenomenon by investigators and legal proceedings alike. The focus is often not on killing itself, but on the attention and importance of the offender and what they gain from being closely involved in a medical crisis. Can a need for attention become so extreme that a person loses all sense of morality? Number five is psychopathy and lack of empathy. Psychopathy is characterized by traits such as shallow emotions, manipulation, dishonesty, and a lack of remorse. Most psychopaths never become killers, and most healthcare workers are compassionate professionals. However, when psychopathic traits exist alongside the access to vulnerable victims, the results can be catastrophic. A person with little empathy may view patients as objects rather than as human beings. And if someone can perfectly imitate compassion, would you ever know the difference? Number six is thrill-seeking and excitement. For some offenders, the hospital environment may provide excitement that they struggle to find elsewhere. Medical emergencies create intense situations filled with urgency, emotion, and adrenaline. The offender may become addicted to the chaos surrounding a crisis and begin creating those situations deliberately. Could saving lives become less exciting than creating the emergency in the first place? Number seven is stress, burnout, and mental deterioration. It is important to note that stress and burnout do not cause people to become serial killers. Millions of healthcare workers experience stress without harming anyone. However, mental health problems combined with other dangerous personality traits may contribute to distorted thinking, poor judgment, or emotional detachment in some offenders. How well do we really know the mental state of the people responsible for our care? As we examine these cases, perhaps the most unsettling truth is that there is no single explanation. Some healthcare killers appear driven by power, Some crave attention, some seek admiration, some seem emotionally detached from human suffering. Yet they often share one thing in common: they learned how to hide in plain sight. How much trust should society place in professional authority? Why were so many warning signs ignored? Would you question a doctor or nurse if something felt wrong? How many suspicious deaths are dismissed as natural causes? Could another healthcare worker be working unnoticed today as a healthcare killer? If evil can wear a white coat and a reassuring smile, what other masks might it be hiding behind? The hospital doors slide open. The corridors glow beneath fluorescent lights. Machines beep steadily in the darkness. Patients sleep believing they are protected. Most healthcare workers are exactly what they appear to be: dedicated people trying to heal the sick. But history leaves us with an uncomfortable question. When a patient places their life in someone else's hands, they are making an act of complete trust. And in the rare cases we've explored, that trust became the perfect disguise. The most frightening monsters are not always lurking in shadows. Sometimes they stand beside the hospital bed, wearing a name badge, carrying a clipboard, and smiling reassuringly as they ask, "How are you feeling today?" As we come to the end of today's episode, it's important to remember that the cases we discussed are extraordinarily rare. Millions of doctors, nurses, dentists, and healthcare professionals dedicate their lives to helping others, often under immense pressure and at great personal sacrifice. But the stories of Harold Shipman, Beverly Allitt, Charles Cullen, and others continue to fascinate and disturb us because they force us to confront a difficult reality. Trust can be weaponized. These individuals did not lurk in dark alleyways or abandoned buildings. They worked in hospitals, clinics, and care homes. They wore uniforms, carried qualifications, and were welcomed into the lives of people at their most vulnerable. Perhaps that's why these cases remain so unsettling. When we think of danger, we imagine obvious threats. We imagine warning signs, we imagine monsters looking like monsters. But what happens when the person everyone trusts is the very person causing harm? As you reflect on these stories, ask yourself, how many warning signs were missed? How many concerns were dismissed because no one wanted to believe a caregiver could be responsible? And how far should trust extend before it is balanced by accountability? The next time you walk through a hospital corridor, hear the distant beeping of monitors, or pass a silent ward late at night, remember that these places hold some of humanity's greatest acts of kindness, but they have also been the setting for some of its darkest betrayals. Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow the podcast and join us next time as we explore another case where truth proves stranger and far more frightening than fiction. Until then, stay curious, stay critical, and remember, sometimes the most terrifying stories aren't about what goes bump in the night. Sometimes they're about the people we are taught never to fear.
Well, guys, that was amazing. You guys have been brilliant if you've made it all the way through what I'm sure is going to be part two. So you have been amazing. We've been even better. I've been Quinn, she's been Gypsy, and she's been Amy Lou. So we will see you next time for another true crime podcast. Bye.
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 Good vibes and bad decisions.